So, I know that the title of today's podcast episode is Breaking Through Creative Blocks, but truth be told, that was clickbait. I don't actually believe that creative blocks are real. And you might be thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Well, I don't believe what you're experiencing is a creative block. In fact, I think it's just a lack of discipline and maybe a hint of laziness as well. And before you think I'm being pretentious or holier than thou, I want to emphasize that that is not my intention. That is not my intention. I just want to bring your attention to my belief when it comes up to creative blocks. And in order to do that, let me tell you a quick story. Story time. So, on this particular day, I sit down to write this week's Thriving Artist newsletter article, and I realize that I have no ideas. I have no idea what I want to write about. I'm just staring at the blinking cursor on my screen and blinking my eyes along with it. It was a really troublesome feeling. I sitting there with the full intention to create, and staring desperately into my creative mind, only to find nothing but a void of nothingness. The temptation to wait for inspiration, motivation, or that elusive, perfect idea was strong. But on this day, your boy chose a different path. Welcome all. Welcome one. I know I said that backwards, but I don't care. To the Thriving Artist Corner, where we talk about using the process of mastering your craft as a vehicle to your material success and your spiritual enlightenment. I am your host, Deji Dio Oduole. And if you're so happen to be a reader as well, you'll probably enjoy the Thriving Artist newsletter, which is a free email newsletter on the same topic, sent out every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern sharp. Sign up to that is in the link in the description. Okay, so how did your boy make it out of this creative block? I did so with a mantra that I've developed over the years of being an artist. And before I tell you what this mantra is, I will first tell you what I believe mantras are not. So, mantras are not magic words that create the outcomes we desire. No. Mantras are constant reminders to do the things that will create the outcomes that we desire. They're essentially reminders to be the person who has the habits that create the outcomes that we desire. So, what was the mantra? The mantra is ideas are infinite. Ideas are infinite. Go ahead and say it with me. Ideas are infinite. Now, what this mantra allowed me to do, and what I hope it helps you do as well, is it shifted my mental reality, because you can't really believe that mantra. You can't really believe that ideas are infinite and simultaneously believe that creative blocks are real. They're two opposing beliefs. So what the mantra helped me do, the habit that it helped me develop, was that it helped me to develop a habit around taking action even when I wasn't inspired. And in finding that habit and developing that habit, cultivating it, I started to see the light. Creative blocks really are not real. They are a figment of the imagination of you and I, and they are rooted in paralysis. aka a lack of discipline to dig your ideas out of the ground with brute force work. Don't believe me? Think of it this way. Both of these scenarios exist. And if you're an artist, you've experienced both of these. But scenario number one, you are inspired from the very beginning. You have an amazing idea and you are so motivated to bring that idea into the physical world. And then once you do, the product is trash. It's happened to me multiple times. It happens to me a lot, actually. But the other example also exists, the other extreme where there was no inspiration from the jump and you just decided to put in work and you dig that idea out and you force it out, and it's a messy process, but it happens. And at the end of the trail, the creative trail, you have an amazing product. So what that tells us is that because of the existence of both of those scenarios, all the scenarios in between are also just as real. And because those exist, what the information that gives us is that there's not really a true benefit to waiting for inspiration. It doesn't guarantee that the end product will actually be good. No matter how much you think it will, no matter how inspired you feel at the beginning, it's not going to guarantee that your end product will be good. But what it will guarantee is that you will create less. And what that guarantees, my friend, is that you will be objectively worse at what you do. So why wait for inspiration? Why succumb to the falsity of the creative block if it doesn't guarantee a successful piece? The more you wait for inspiration to strike, the less skillful you will be at executing on ideas and the more mediocre your creations will be. But I get it. It's much easier said than done. Creating without inspiration feels horrible. In fact, there's another dictionary definition of inspiration that is the drawing in of breath, inhalation. And what I interpreted that as is that inspiration is almost like breathing to artists and creative people. So when we don't have it, life literally feels like death. But fortunately, even though we can't create oxygen yet, we do have the power to create inspiration. Yes, you heard me right. We can create inspiration. Well, let me explain what that process looks like. So if you are a newsletter subscriber, if you're a frequenter of the Thriving Artist newsletter, you've probably heard me speak about the inspiration cycle plenty of times. But for the sake of this podcast episode, I will explain it again. And you'll probably hear me explain it again and again. But the inspiration cycle is the life cycle of art, the life cycle of creativity, the life cycle of inspiration. And before, just in case you are one of these small percentage of humans that doesn't remember what a life cycle is, fear not, don't worry. I want you to close your eyes and we're going to time travel back to Miss Harbor's third grade science class where we were learning about the life cycle of amphibians, more specifically, the frog. So Kermit the Frog was not born a frog. You see, his mama laid some eggs, and that egg then morphed into a tadpole. So he was Kermit the Tadpole first. Then when he got his plankton for his nutrients, he eventually grew 2 awkward back legs that he couldn't use yet. And as he got a little bit stronger, ate a little bit more fish, he then decided that he wanted a set of arms to match his back legs. So guess what? He punched out of his skin 2 arms because he said he wanted some arms now. So like a G, he just ripped them out of his chest. And then he became a 4-legged tadpole frog hybrid. Weird tangent, I know, but bear with me. I'm going somewhere with this. So eventually he loses his tail and he comes out the water like Soulja Boy, hops around, and if he got some riz, he'll eventually get a lady frog to lay his eggs, and the cycle will repeat itself. Now, the inspiration triangle, the inspiration cycle, is not as complex as that, but it has a lot of similarities. But it only has 3 stages. Those stages are inspiration, motivation, and action. So what that means is how things usually get done is the human gets inspired. The human has an idea. And then the human becomes motivated to bring that idea into the physical world with action. However, this cycle differentiates from the life cycle of Kermit the Frog because we can punch in at any stage of the cycle. We don't have to start with inspiration. So we can start by being motivated to take action and then creating inspiration that way. But get this, you can also act in the absence of inspiration and motivation. And that action then generates inspiration, and those ideas then motivate you to act even more. Yes, it is very possible to create, generate, produce, manufacture inspiration. So I encourage you to think of your creative mind like a barren cornfield with no crops. Occasionally when you go out there, there might be something, a little something growing, a little garden, a little corn plant that you can tend to and grow into the idea of your liking. You already have like a rough idea of what you want to create. But more often than not, and this is what people call creative blocks, when you sit down to create, you are met with a barren wasteland that's dark, scary, filled with cobwebs, dust, coyotes running around, and a bunch of other things you don't want to mess with. And so you don't. You just sit back and you just let it do its thing, and no idea ever comes. But all you need to do in this situation is tend to the wasteland, knock down the cobwebs, dust the ground, turn on the lights, dig a hole, plant a seed, pull out the shotgun, and chase the coyotes away. And through the process of taking these actions, you'll have a clearer version of what you want your garden to look like. You'll have an idea. So, if you are an illustrator, draw the first line. If you are a musician, record the first note. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur, sell something, put down the books, and collect some monies. If you're a writer, write the first word. I really wasn't bluffing when I said I sat down to write and I had 0 ideas. My mind was completely blank. But then I just led with that thought, and I sat down and I literally wrote verbatim, I have no idea what to write about right now. And that thought led to another sentence and another word and another thought. And piece by piece, it evolved into the full podcast episode that you're listening to right now. So, again, ideas are indeed infinite. The creative block that you think you are experiencing is a figment of your imagination, and it's rooted in paralysis and your lack of discipline to dig your ideas out of the ground with brute force work. So now that you understand this, now that you have that information, are you going to continue to wait for inspiration? Or are you going to take action and manufacture that inspiration for yourself? I hope you choose the latter. Now, if you enjoyed today's podcast episode, I encourage you to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Let me know how you deal with creative blocks. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, you'll probably also enjoy my writings on the Thriving Artist newsletter, which you can subscribe to with the link in the description below. I'll see you guys at next week's podcast episode on the other side of your creative block. Peace out and stay beautiful.